spot in the West, but the Preds are setting themselves up in a good position, and it's so fun this time of year when every single game is a big game. I think we kind of overstate how big games really are sometimes, but no, every game is a big one, especially the one coming up on Thursday, and it's fun.
And it was a good night for the money puck numbers because they won, the Blues lost, the Wild lost. The Flames beat the Kings in regulation, which on one hand you're saying, well, the Flames are still in this thing, right? So you almost you'd love to see them get knocked back. But at the same time, all of a sudden, the LA Kings, they have Victor Arvidsson that just came back from a long-term back injury, and he injured himself again. He's back on long-term IR. He's out at least a month. When you put a guy on LTIR, that also kind of says, well, maybe if we make the playoffs, we could bring him back then. Mm-hmm. And it's tough to jumpstart your season when you haven't played at all. So there's a weapon they thought they were getting, and they're not getting him. They also lost another one of their really top-end scorers, Adrian Kempe. They sent him back from the road trip to L.A. They're in Western Canada. They were in Calgary last night. So something's going on with him. He got injured in the game against the Oilers. So all of a sudden, the Kings don't look like – and also, let's keep in mind, and Predator fans will appreciate this, no knock on the guy, but David Riddick has not been a starting goalie in this league for a while. We saw what he looked like here, ups and downs and, backup, but they're really leaning on him. Cam Talbot, I thought by this time would bounce back, but they have major question marks in goal. So I didn't think they were catchable for a while. Now I'm kind of wondering if maybe that spot is not just spoken for right now. So a lot of things can happen, but the Predators, every time you win, your math gets better. I was looking at this. They got 22 games left. That's a quarter of a season, right? So many things can happen. The trade deadline hasn't happened yet. There's always possible injuries around the corner that change the formula for every team. But if the Predators went 11-8-3, basically 500, but some of the losses being overtime losses, that would put them
up a couple points.
That would put them at 93 points, which is more than they had last year. Mm-hmm. And that's above the projection that everybody's saying the last playoff team would get. Now, things can change, right? A team gets red hot, they rip off, just kind of like the Predators are. They're on a heater right now. That could happen with another team. But just looking at how that's tracking, they're giving themselves a little bit more margin for error than they had a couple of weeks ago. That's what a hot streak like this does.
They're setting themselves up in a good position for the playoffs, so that's a good thing for the game on Thursday, a good thing for their playoff chances, and it's also a good thing for UC Saros. Because we saw the report yesterday that came out during our show from Frank Zaravalli of the Daily Faceoff. He wrote that some things had changed on the Predators front. Of course, we knew that teams would be interested in UC Saros, the New Jersey Devils being one of them. We knew that. Barry Trotz had talked about the conversations that he and New Jersey Devils general manager Tom Fitzgerald had. But Frank Zaravalli also added, but the Preds say that they're intent on keeping Saros so long as they're in the playoffs. So we were talking about this yesterday. First of all, is that true? Second of all, is that the best approach? Well, Barry Trotz was on with Stillman and Company yesterday, kind of clarified those comments that were put out by Frank Zaravalli yesterday. This was Barry Trotz with Jared yesterday.
The Daily Faceoff, Frank Zaravalli saying that you've told teams as long as the Predators are in position to make the playoffs, Saros won't be traded. Is that the case, Barry Trotz, presented by Gary Forsacura?
That is the case. I think if we're in the playoff spot, I owe that to our players. I owe that to our fans. That's fairly accurate. Now, obviously, I'm going to leave a little window open. If there's some kind of crazy deal that comes out and knocks me on my chair, then I will definitely owe that to the fans as well and the organization. So, but yeah, that's pretty accurate.
So we were kind of talking about this yesterday. Is it an absolute? Is it you're in the playoffs and ain't no way anybody can kind of take Saros away from us? So Barry Trott's not going to speak in absolutes. Says, look, there's a window open. You still have to continue to blow me away. So I don't think that Barry Trotz isn't in business, but confirming there that if the Predators are in a playoff position, he feels like he owes that to the team.
Well, I mean, he does owe it to the team. And as we, continue to listen I know we have more clips on that, but he said some other things.
He said a lot.
Yeah, he said a lot.
As
and
he
it
normally
was
does.
Barry
good
do be
stuff.
saying a lot.
It was some good stuff too. So, kudos to Jared for asking him those questions and getting on those answers. But I mean, he does hold it to his team, and we talked about this yesterday, Willie. That listen, you have asked your team to do something, and they're doing it. You don't then go behind their back, and I'm not saying that Barry would have done that because again, as we play more clips, you will see he still that's not the way he operates. But if you're asking me to do something as a player, I go out and do it, and then you turn around and you change up the whole script, and not just change it. That's a big change. That's like a monumental, that's a franchise change. That's just not a season change. That's a franchise change. And you do that, and then you walk in that locker room and you got to look at Forsberg, and you got to look at Yossi, guys like that has been with this team for a while, that been through the ups and downs. It better work, because now we lose all faith in you. But I think Barry understands that being the coach of the Nashville Predators, being the first inaugural coach of the Nashville Predators, going through, the things that this team has went through, being, a guy that has been so entrenched in hockey for a very long time. He understands that, listen, if I say something, I got to hold to it. I asked these guys to do something, and they're doing it. Now, listen, things can change, and I'm leaving a little window open. But I'm going to hold true to what I said. Y'all honor what I said. I'm going to honor, y'all honor the things that I'm asking you to do. Then I will honor the things that I said I was going to do or wasn't going to do as a GM. So I think this is a good move. Now, again, if something blows his socks off, okay, we got to talk about it. But until then, listen, I'm going to try to keep this team together, because it seems like, we're clicking. Guys are contributing. Our frontline guys are playing well, and then our secondary guys are chipping in every night. If we can keep this going, we can find ourselves not just getting in the playoffs, but having a good position in the playoffs where we can, maybe upset a team in the first round. So I like what I heard from Barry. I mean, listen, if we keep winning, then status quo. If we don't, then okay, I got to think about some things.
There's so many layers to what he discussed in that conversation with Jared that I thought was very interesting. So number one, he was basically saying, and you could listen to all the details, but throughout that in-depth conversation, we played only the clip, but it sounds to me like he hasn't been. He says, I haven't gotten the phone call that has knocked me out of my chair or anything close to it. It seems like, right?
If he would have gotten the offer that knocked his socks off, I think the move would have been made.
Well, especially depending on when it was,
Right.
but it sounds to me like some people have taken their swings.
He even said that.
And,
I haven't gotten it.
and nothing yet has really had him pause. So does that mean it couldn't happen between now and March 8th? No, I mean, I guess there's still a chance that would happen. But I think he's let everybody know. Look, he's let every single fan know because he said it. Like, the price is very high, as it should be for a guy like Saros. And now, if you take a look at what Saros can mean, I don't know that people have really realized how much Saros was elevating them the last 3 or 4 seasons when he's been in there, and how much he wasn't elevating them up until about, a week and a half ago. He had a very below-average season for him and just an average season. But now you're starting to see he looks like himself in there. And I don't know what clicked for him. Traditionally, he's always finished seasons really well. And that's exciting, right? That's where, like you said, they're going to be an underdog if they make it to the playoffs. But if you have a UC Saros playing at his best, that's what could make a first-round series interesting, right? If you could steal a couple of games and all of a sudden you put pressure on a team that's supposed to beat you, that's what the NHL playoffs are all about, right? You saw last year the Boston Bruins got beat by the Florida Panthers, who barely got in. I forget how many points the Panthers had getting in, but they didn't look like they had a Stanley Cup run in them. Nobody would have thought that. And they got all the way to the finals. I mean, so crazy stuff happens.
Yeah.
But if you could put yourself in the best position you can, there's something to be said for that. And you do it knowing that you're, as he said, I'm balancing the short term with the long term.
And that's what he said. I do view UC Saros as a potential long-term option. And I think that Barry Trotz there, whenever this report came out from Frank Saravalli, I frankly was kind of confused of, whoa. This whole time you've been saying this is the price and it's a high asking price. And that, well, I'm picking up the phone. And now all of a sudden that's changed, that now that you're in a playoff position, like, is the price still the price? That if somebody picks up the phone and calls you with an absolute haul, is the answer no if you're in a playoff position? I was just kind of confused about what had changed, what really has changed. Have things changed? But Jared asked him that question of, look, if somebody picks up the phone with a great offer, are you going to say no if you're in a playoff position? This was what Barry Trotz had to say.
I do wonder, when you told the other general managers about that price that you said would be a knock your socks off, I can't not do it, if you got offered that same package right now, would you say no because of where the team is, or would you say that is such an astronomically high price I will take?
I would say thank you, and I would probably talk to Saros and his representative and make that decision.
Okay. What would they say that would sway you one way or another? Like if they said, no, we want to be here in Nashville. We want to get a deal done long-term after this coming season. We don't want to go to New Jersey. We don't want to go to L.A. We don't want to go to any of these other places. Would that sway you?
Well, it might because everything in the cap world has the cap price would have to be right. And Juice would have to be on board with that price and the term and what we wanted to do long term. So I think I owe that to him as a cornerstone player. And but I haven't got that yet, so I don't I haven't crossed that bridge.
So
Barry
what?
Just open book right there.
Right, but I think what he's emphasizing without actually specifying. Basically, what he's saying is, look, I want, if I'm not going to trade UC Saros and I want to sign him for the long term, he absolutely believes you can build a championship team with him as the goalie on the next contract, but he doesn't want to overpay for the next contract. And right now, I'm sure there's some discussions, just like we had our mock discussion yesterday, where if you're UC Saros' agent and I'm going to you to say, well, Juice, give me a little hometown discount. You love being in Nashville. Come on. And the agent's going, look, my guy's he's been in the top 6 of the Vezina voting for 3 straight years.
I gave you a hometown
Right.
I gave you a hometown discount already.
Yeah. 3rd, 6th, and 4th is where he's finished in the Vezina. He's not going to finish there this year, but he's still one of the best goalies in the game. And they're going to try to. This is probably the last big contract he's going to sign. So they want to cash in, just like Forsberg a couple of summers ago. But Barry Trotz is thinking, okay, if I can get him at a reasonable level, knowing that your dollar goes further here, and if he wants to win, every extra $1 million or so per year can help me put the best team around him. That's the negotiation part that I'm sure that is part of the equation here. Because even if he doesn't trade him at the trade deadline, which looks very unlikely at this point, it doesn't mean, and he said this in the interview, the topic can come back up. After the season's over, get close to the draft, free agency, teams are getting their stuff organized. People could come back to the table and say, hey, how are you feeling about it now? How are the negotiations going, right? Because that's when they can start really getting down to it and talk extension.
And I had a couple thoughts on what Barry Trotz had to say there. First and foremost, it's not a no. You give me a haul, it's not a no, even if we're in a playoff position. The second thing, when he says, I would go talk to UC Saros and his people. When we went into this new Barry Trotz era, we've been saying, we don't know what Barry Trotz is like a general manager. We don't know how he works. We don't know, I guess now we know how he talks with the media, and he's an open book. But we just didn't know what kind of GM Barry Trotz was going to be, what his tendencies were. We didn't know what a proposal would be where we would say, oh, Barry would never do that, or that sounds like a Barry move. I think that's kind of a peek behind the curtain of the kind of general manager that Barry Trotz is going to be. We talk about players coaches. It sounds like Barry Trotz is going to be a players GM. Now, is he going to handle business like that with every single player? Like, is Jabroni Bob going to have long conversations with Barry Trotz about a potential move? Probably not. But with a player like UC Saros that has meant so much to this team and that has meant so much with this organization, it's not just going to be super cutthroat and sorry, UC Saros, we're not even going to have a conversation with you because the offer is so good. And I think that's a pretty good way to do business. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get into your thoughts on that, what Barry Trotz had to say about a potential UC Saros trade. But plus, we've been talking a lot about trading UC Saros. What about another goaltender that could be on the trading block that Barry Trotz sounds much more enthusiastic about potentially moving on from? We'll get into that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
I've won a cup, and I had two pretty good goaltenders. I had Philip Grubauer and Braden Holtby, and I'll tell you what. If you have a number one guy and you don't have quite a number two guy, if you're going for it, and there's teams that are in that situation, they've got a true number one, they've got a cup-worthy team, but they don't have a backup. I mean, there's a big price to have the security net. If you're a team that's top of the league, going for it, but your number one is great, and your number two is questionable. Kevin Lankinen is a great person to pick up if that type of player, because you know that he's ready, he's prepared, and he can win against big teams. He's done it all year, so he would be a great pickup for a team in that position. There's no question, and I'm sure I'm going to get some calls on him. I've got some calls, and at this point, I said, well, get back with me this week or next week, and we'll see where that goes. But he's great for any of those teams that are in that position, but he's also great for us.
You ain't nothing but he's also great for us too. Look, I've won a cup. I know that you need two goaltenders to win a cup. And man, Kevin Lankinen, he can win against some good teams and win big games. But hey, he's good for us. But could also be good for you. Help me help you with Kevin Lankinen.
It's like, Willie, it's like when you walk into that door. Hey, let me show you this car right here. This car right here, boy. Sit in it, Willie. Sit in it, Caroline. Oh, y'all look good in it.
We love having this car.
Oh, my goodness.
You would look good in that car,
Just imagine yourself driving down Broadway in this car, boy. Oh, I mean, we can keep it, and we can sell it to someone else. But you look good in this car, boy, boy.
Yeah, oh, man.
Barry was selling it, I'm telling you. I mean, kudos to Barry. I mean, they are in a unique position. Is it, I'm trying to figure out, is it Askarov or Askarov?
Askarov.
Barry said Askarov.
Never trust the coaches and the GMs.
David Coyle also said Carrier.
Yeah, so I'm listening to Barry. I'm like,
Saros.
Is it Askarov or Askarov? Which one is it? So I don't know.
If you ask the person,
yeah,
it's Askarov.
Askarov, okay.
It's just harder to say. Just when you see the letters ASK,
yeah,
your mind immediately goes to ask. But
yeah.
Askarov is how you say it.
Okay.
I mean, but
It's
hopefully
Barry.
over time, yeah.
But I mean, they're in a unique position where they have obviously who they believe is their goalie for now and for, the future. And the future may be 4 or 5 more years, 6 years, I don't know. But then they have their young stud in Milwaukee that is playing lights out, and he is definitely their future. But then they have Lankinen, and I think I brought this up a while ago, like, okay, we're talking about trading Saros or potentially trading Askarov. Why aren't we talking about Lankinen? Because he's going to be a free agent. He's a good goalie. Why not try to move him? You may not get, what you would get. You definitely wouldn't get what you would get for a Saros or an Askarov, but you would get something back that may be able to help you in the short term. I guess that's what Barry is thinking now. Like, listen, I really don't want to move off Saros, and judging by, the price tag, I don't think the price tag has changed. I just think it's so high that teams they're trying to whittle it down a little bit, trying to chip at it, and Barry's like, nope, you're not chipping at this rock, not one bit. And then you got a Askarov. He's going to want to haul for a Askarov too, which leave Lankinen, the guy that you can possibly move, that it may not get you a lot back, but you can bring this young guy up, allow him to back up UC, but then you may get something back that can help you right now as you make this push for the playoffs.
I think you're spot on. It was interesting. Jared picked up on that, and I know the segment after he had that interview, he picked up on those same signals. And I do think Kevin Lankinen should be credited for his professionalism. Mm-hmm. He's in the last year of his contract. Last year, I thought, might just walk and test the market this year, but he decided to take one more year, and knowing that he was going to be the backup again. I think he aspires to try to earn another starting job. I think he's like a lot of goalies. I would put him in the classic Andy Dalton kind of mix, right? If he were your goalie on a really good team in front of you, I think he would do the job. If you're expecting him to elevate an average to below average team, that's probably a little bit too much to ask for him. But he's a solid goalie. Like, he is going to work hard. He's got a great attitude. Everybody on the team loves him. You can sit him for 2 weeks and not play him. He went 24 days without a start and then went into Vegas and beat Vegas, the defending champions. So don't look at the numbers, right? Think about who he's been asked to play against and the conditions that you throw him out there. But he doesn't complain and say, oh, thanks for playing me against the tough teams on the road. What do you expect me to do?
Yeah.
He's gone 8-4 with some really tough starts. So that should be attractive to somebody out there. But obviously Barry Trotz is saying, look, at some point I've got to see if Askarov is ready. I got to clear the decks. He's earned the chance to come up here. But maybe there's no deal there. I don't know if you could find it. But I'm curious what the phone calls will be for a guy like Lankinen. Toss you a 6th-round pick or something. That's hard for me to part with because Lankinen he's rocked. You can carry 3 goalies right after the trading deadline, so you could do that. And Jared actually asked that. Is there anything they didn't cover in the interview yesterday? Like, my goodness, they might as well have talked about every player on the team.
We talked about Vrabelese, how you always had to learn how to speak Vrabelese. Trotzies, Barry's. Now that is beginner level language. That is beginning level learning how to dissect what a coach and general manager is saying because he lays it right out there. And you're right, Jared did ask him because you might be asking yourself, well, if the Preds trade Lankinen at the trade deadline, well, Barry said, look, we're making a push for the playoffs. We're going to hold on to the goalie as long as we're in a playoff position. Money Puck gives the Predators a 65% chance of making the playoffs. Who's your backup goaltender in the playoffs? Barry Trotz.
Do you feel comfortable with where Askarov is right now to where when you enter the Stanley Cup playoffs, he being behind Saros, I'm okay. I got my 2 goalies. I've got my Grubauer and my Holtby. Or would you want him to get a little bit more NHL experience before maybe throwing him into the fire?
Well, in the ideal world, I'd like him to have more NHL experience. But I'll tell you what, I don't think there's too many teams that could say, hey, we're going to bring your minor league goaltender and stick him in net in the National Hockey League, and they would feel really, really comfortable with that. I feel pretty comfortable that he would do a decent job for us because he is a talent. He's one of the best talents in net, maybe that's not in the National Hockey League right now. And I just think that his personality is just he'll be fine. He likes the big stage. He doesn't mind being out there a little bit and that. So I'm actually I would be okay with that.
I wish that everyone listening right now could have seen Barry Trotz's face when he was saying that answer. And when he was talking about Askarov, he had the biggest grin on his face, like when you ask a little girl if she has a crush on a boy in her class, like, so he looked so happy and so giddy talking about Askarov. So it sounds like right there that if they trade Lankinen, which it sounds like Barry Trotz is trying to do, he's putting it out there, Lankinen is on sale, that if the Predators make the playoffs, Askarov is going to be your backup goaltender in the playoffs, and Barry Trotz sounds more than comfortable doing that.
It could get to that. I would say be aware that having that third guy can really come in handy. Think about when UC Saros got hurt a couple years ago, and they were left with David Riddick, who clearly wasn't ready. It didn't play well. And then you have to go to your number 3 guy, which at the time was Connor Ingram, and he's turned into a solid NHL goalie. He's had a good year, although you talk about falling off a cliff. Arizona has hit a huge wall. What are they, like lost 13 in a row, I think, or something like that.
Oof.
But I don't think you can fault him. He's proven to be a solid NHL goalie. But at the time, they had to throw everything on his shoulders, and he had only played a couple of games. So you see it, like, how many goalies did Vegas play last year? 5, I think.
Was it 5?
5,
My
I think, in the
goodness.
postseason, or 5 at least down the stretch. It was unbelievable, like how many guys that they ended up having to use. So you do kind of have to think a little bit along those lines. But at this point, I do think Barry Trotz is excited to see the next step in Yaroslav Askarov's career. But he's careful. This is another detail they discussed, about the mental part of it. And he said some interesting insights about, Pekka Rinne is trying to work on that aspect of the game with him. Just the day-to-day, shouldering the load, keeping the progress going, understanding the North American culture, working on your English, working on your lifestyle. He hasn't been over the States too long. I think he's done a really good job. He's now doing some interviews in English for a while. I mean, imagine going to Russia and, doing interviews. Like, for a while, you wouldn't do anything, but maybe slowly you learn the language so that you could start having small conversations, order food. Pekka Rinne said when he first came to Milwaukee, he had absolutely no clue, right? He just had to order food or anything. He'd never been over here. So he needed some time to acclimate, not only as a player, but also just being in North America.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it may be a little bit more, may be a little easier to facilitate a trade with Lankinen than it would be with Saros or Skarov. Now, you will definitely get a bigger haul for those two guys, the two latter that I talked about, but it may be easier to facilitate a trade, with Lankinen, if indeed you go down that route. Now, I mean, they don't have to make a move. They can stay put and ride with, Lankinen and Saros in the net moving forward. And that will and I do believe that will get them into the playoffs. And like Willie said, if you do need that third goalie, then Askarov is there. If they do get in the playoffs, something happens to one of the goalies, you can bring one of them up. You can bring Askarov up and then replace whoever is hurt.
And that's the balance of the right now versus the future that Barry Trotz was talking about. Look, I'm trying to win right now. I'd like to make the playoffs. I feel like this team deserves that. But remember, our end goal is also the future and building a cup contending team. Would you feel better about going into the playoffs with 3 goalies? Of course. More is always better. But it's always about responsible allocation of your assets, of also looking ahead in the future. I don't know what you could get in return for Kevin Lankinen, but also you can play into the desperation of teams of, look, I have all these goaltenders and I don't have to do anything with them. You want to give me a 6th-round pick for Kevin Lankinen? How about a 4th? How about a prospect? Whatever it might be.
Like, I will tell you this.
They can sweeten the pot a little bit more when you're desperate to help you out in the long term, while you also have a solid backup option in the playoffs, making that balance. It's a difficult balance.
Kevin Lankinen is way better than the second best goalie on a lot of these teams. Like, I would say LA for sure.
Starting goalie of some of these teams too.
Maybe not a contender trying to win the cup, but look, there are some teams. We just mentioned the Kings. They're going with David Riddick and Cam Talbot, who's aging and who has hit the skids. He's not having a good year at all. Kevin Lankinen would be an interesting guy to talk about. Now, are the Predators going to trade him to a team that's right above them in the standings? I don't know. Like, that's intriguing. The Oilers. They remember Jack Campbell crashed and burned, and they sent him to the minors. He's still in the minors. He's been there for months, and he's making $4 million a year or whatever he is. Ooh. That's how little confidence they have in him. They've got a young guy in Stuart Skinner who's played very well, but as an insurance policy, I think Lankinen would be an intriguing upgrade from Cal Pickard, who's been basically a minor leaguer for an up-and-down kind of guy for years, a number 3 most years on most teams. He's been okay for that team, actually pretty good. He's helped him a lot. But Lankinen would be intriguing. There's other teams I think you could go down the list and say, is Lankinen better than their number 2? I think the answer is yes, and he doesn't cost too much. So 3rd-round pick, I don't know. Like, would you bite on that? Pretty interesting.
Yeah, if you're going to lose, if you have the possibility of losing him anyway via free agency, then yeah, that would be okay. Let's talk and let's make the deal. And as a player, if you're going to make that deal, you would hope that the same thing that applies for UC, that we're going to talk to him, That doesn't mean that we're not going to make the deal, but we're going to talk to you and let you know what's going on. Hopefully, he has that same type of, relationship with Lincoln, where he can go to Lincoln and say, listen, this is what we're about to do or thinking about doing. Let your representation, we can discuss whatnot, but more than likely, this is the deal, because now it puts you in a position where you get to play more.
Yeah.
As a player.
And I don't know what Barry's asking price for Kevin Lankinen would be, but he very obviously sounds like he's on sale.
He's open for business.
He's
Yes.
open
The
for
store is
business. Barry is putting
7-Eleven.
for sale
24/7.
signs up throughout the entire NHL. Look at this shiny brand new car. It can be yours for the low price of a second-round pick. Speaking of losing players for nothing, Barry Trotz also touched on another player that we've been discussing as the trade deadline approaches. We'll get into that coming up next. We'll get into your phones. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Do you think you're close on a potential deal with Novak to extend him?
We've talked to the I actually talked to the representatives today, so I think the framework is there. We just got to make sure that, like I said, the years and the numbers match. If they do, then we will probably do something. If we can't, then I'm in a position not to. I don't think I can let a guy like Tommy Novak go for nothing. I don't think I've got to get something if he's not signed before the trade deadline.
Okay, a lot there from Barry Trotz on Tommy Novak, who is due for a new contract. When we spoke with Elliot Friedman a couple of weeks ago, he threw out, quote, in the fours for Tommy Novak's next contract, and he did say he didn't talk to Tommy Novak's people. He hadn't talked to the Nashville Predators. In the fours for Tommy Novak, that's awfully steep. That is awfully steep for Tommy Novak. But Barry Trotz said there, look, the framework is in place, but if we can't get a deal done, I'm not going to let Tommy Novak walk for nothing. If we can get a deal done, great. If we can't, we'll trade Tommy Novak.
Yeah.
It sounded almost for a second like he was on the verge of saying, we're almost there. We've got a deal. And then he kind of pivoted and said, look, and then he said, I can't lose Tommy Novak. For nothing.
For nothing.
And he said he's homegrown. I want homegrown guys. Yeah. Like he gave a lot of vibes. Like, look, I want this to happen. This guy. The other part that I think is important about Novak is he's 26. You don't need all your players to be 30 somethings. Look, the
22.
core of Yossi, Shen, O'Reilly, Nyquist, they're going to be in the mid 30s here pretty soon in another year or two. So. If you have that and a bunch of 22, 23, you need some guys in the middle somewhere. And Novak would be one of those guys that I think hopefully you could lean on. Hopefully Glass gets it going and proves he's one of those guys too, because he's a couple years older. He should be a guy that you can count on here soon. He's showing signs. I still would love to see that next breakthrough from him. Everybody's rooting for Cody Glass. But that was weird. Like, I thought he was going to say, because when he said framework, but then he gave the old David Poile line. He said, all we need is the years and the money. Remember, he used to say that with David Poile. He would say that we'd ask about Forsberg.
Okay, so that's the template to everything, then, if that's the case.
I'd like to drive to the grocery store.
Exactly.
All I need is a car and some gas.
Yeah, that's the framework. We got the framework of how to get to the grocery store. Now we just got to get there.
What is the framework even?
It sounds like they've somewhat
had conversations?
Agreed. Well, it sounds like
I would hope so.
Sounds like they had a meaningful conversation yesterday. Is
Yeah.
what the little scoop was, I thought. But yeah, like, maybe they made some progress yesterday. Maybe they've agreed. There's so many sliding things. Like, you want to bet on yourself and go one more year? Maybe I'll pay you this, or I'll commit to you for a longer term, but I want that number to be down a little more because I'm guaranteeing you the money. Even if you never score another goal,
right,
you're guaranteed this amount of money for 3 years or whatever it is they've talked about. So maybe they're narrowing the gap, right? You can be nowhere on a contract impasse, and then one phone call could spark things. And it's done. So who knows?
It's just about the urgency.
He got another point last night.
Yeah, 11 points in 11 games.
That's right. He's chipping in, and he made another great pass where Luke Evangelista had the net wide open and just missed it. That could have been another assist for him. He's not shooting that much, Novak, but he's making those steady contributions. The other part that Dmitry Filipovic was saying, that his underlying numbers have improved. I agree with that. He's never going to be a great two-way player, but good things are generally happening when he's on the ice right now, more nights than not, and that's valuable.
I think the longer you let it sit, because obviously it seems like Barry wants to sign Novak back, but obviously the money and the years are a big hurdle. Now, how big that hurdle is, we don't know, but he would like to have him back. I guess the fear is, if you are a fan and like Novak, is that if he continues to play this way, then possibly that framework start to itch up a little bit more. Elliott threw out there, not because he had some, insight on what the Predators were doing as far as, how much Novak can possibly get in the open market, but he's just talking to other people outside of the Nashville area. And some people are saying, it could be $4 million. So if Novak continues to play, maybe it's just closer and closer to that number that they want. The number may be $4 million, may not be $4 million, maybe 3.5. But the better he plays as the season continues to go, then the more likely he will get the number or close to the number that he wants. And, do you sign him now? Do you wait and sign him later? You're not going to move him unless somebody gives you something that's going to be, again, something that's going to help me now and also help me in the future, because Tommy's playing well right now.
And Barry Trotz said, it at least sounds to me, if we can't come to a deal by the deadline, I'm going to have to trade you.
Yeah.
I don't know what the return would be, and I'm sure that the asking price would go down since teams in the league now know, well, you don't want to lose him for nothing. Why would I give you for example, second-round pick when I know you just want to get something for him? I'll give you a fourth, and Barry might have to take that. I don't think that's a position that Barry Trotz wants to be in, nor do I think that this team is in a position to give up anybody who's creating offense.
That would be tough to lose
That's tough.
him and not be the same team. Although they did play a stretch of games without him, and they did do fairly well while he was injured. But that was when the team was really clicking. I think they're a better team with Tommy Novak in the lineup, without question. But you don't have to trade him, right? You would prefer. You could ride it out. You could if you feel like you're close enough to a deal. Say, oh man, we're not there yet. But do you feel good enough about it that you feel like you'll get it done, even if you don't trade him? That's what you would have to weigh if you're still not agreed upon by March the 8th.
Well, I think because this is a homegrown player. You sort of, maybe the player and the agent sort of leans more to staying here, because I know that's, ultimately that's what players want to do. If they find them a good organization, they want to stay at that organization, but they want to be compensated fairly. Now, if you can find that number, his agent may say to him, hey, listen, I know it's not the number that we wanted, but man, you've been here. You love what's going on. You see the future. Maybe we should take this deal. It's a good deal. They're not undervaluing it. It's a good deal. Let's just take this deal and kind of go from there.
David Poyle won that battle many times with a lot of players where, Roman Yossi, Victor Arvidsson, Ryan Ellis, that second deal where you're like, man, Matthias Ekholm was another one. UC Saros on the last one. $5 million a year. He's one of the best bargains going for this contract year. And how did they sell it? Exactly what you're saying. You're homegrown. We want you here. Your money goes further here. We want to build something good. And they, for whatever reason, he won that battle. And I'm sure that discussion is happening with Novak, too, saying, hey, look, if you like it here and you want to be here, we want you here. But your money's going to go further. We'll give you the security of a little more term maybe, but you're going to take a little less than maybe you could get if you hit the open market.
Tune in to 94.9 The Fan tomorrow night as Vanderbilt women's basketball takes on Missouri on the road. Pregame at 6:45. Tip-off at 7 o'clock with coverage also available on 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Coming up next, Jonathan Hutton, Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow will join us. We heard from Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon both yesterday of what the Titans need to do in the offseason, the approach in the draft, the approach in free agency. We'll get Hutton's thoughts on that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're broadcasting live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round.
Look at the time. Look at the time.
Look at the time. It is Hutton o'clock. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3, The Game and The Game Nashville app. It's noon on a Wednesday, which we affectionately call in this program Hutton o'clock. Jonathan Hutton, Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow, joins us now. I will tee it up to you, Hutton. We heard from Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon. A ton of information and tidbits from them yesterday. What maybe stood out to you the most from what we heard from the Titans general manager and head coach?
Well, the head coach, just speaking on behalf of his experience with being in a spot where you can draft an offensive tackle or a wide receiver, and he's referenced quite a bit his time in Denver with the 4-pack of receivers they had with Peyton Manning at quarterback, albeit Manning on the back end of his career, but they still went and won a Super Bowl. And the fact that all 4 receivers could get open in different ways in the moment. And then comparing that to Jamar Chase and saying he's an all-pro and everyone knew it in Cincinnati. Same thing with Penei Sewell. They knew he would be an all-pro, instant starter, but beyond that. And the decision to go with the receiver over the tackle because the receiver scores points. That's number one. Number two, let me do a 1B. 1B is he doesn't control the roster. We're going to talk about what the other guys said. It sounds like, and I don't disagree with it. I mean, with 7 picks, but only 3 picks in the first, second, and then 4th round, you're looking around going, okay, what do we do to gain draft collateral, to get some ammunition here to go and actually improve this roster now through the draft, get young players who are going to start. You don't do that typically beyond the 4th round. And Caroline, I'm sitting here going, well, the biggest draft capital you have is pick number 7. And if for whatever reason, I'm not saying it will happen, I don't think it will. For whatever reason, if the tackles go a little high, 2 of them go higher than 7 or whatever, and a quarterback falls to you, you're sitting on a great spot there to trade back and gain more capital. I think that it's smart by Carthon to say, hey, give us a call if you're interested in 7.
Yeah.
And see what happens, because right now you're going to spend a lot of money in free agency. You don't have many young players coming in, and typically that's not the best way to go and fill a roster. This isn't Colorado Buffaloes football. You have to build through the guys coming in, not the guys that are already in the league.
And I'm with you on what Rand Carthon said about the 7th overall pick. Essentially said, look, I like 7. I'm not married to 7. I'll pick up the phone about 7 if you've got something to offer. Jonathan Hutton is with us. You bring up receiver. I feel like the overwhelming sentiment from what Rand Carthon had to say yesterday, he was talking about getting faster, about how fast the Miami Dolphins were, about stretching the field of, look, if the receiver's at 7, this is a deep offensive line class. It seemed like all signs pointed toward receiver at 7, but I think we all know, 1, the Titans probably don't know what they're going to do, and 2, if they say something in February, they might not necessarily mean it. But what did you make about the receiver talk yesterday?
No, I agree. I mean, so last week we were discussing, I would go receiver early and try to load up and pay an offensive lineman with heavy money that has proven that he's that guy. Now, there's not a great list of who's who at offensive tackle, like compared to some of the names that have been thrown out there the last couple of years. So I understand if you want to go young, and you can build young next to Peter Skoronski and with your quarterback, and you've got a great core there. But this is the time with a rookie quarterback and a rookie salary to load up at a spot that is premium, and you take advantage of the fact that your quarterback's not eating up a huge majority of your cap whenever you have to be below it at a certain time, and you can give the guaranteed money there until you have to pay the QB if he pans out. So I would do that. I would also draft young at receiver because that generally hits, that generally works out. At the high point of the draft, not every one of them, but it's hitting at a great deal more than what I remember it hitting in the first round of drafts of 20 years ago. D-Mase, you can speak to that too. But the top end guys generally are used like that. And look, point being, give me a receiver that is going to come in and play well and hit, and you give him the football. I think this coach, pass oriented, is going to do that. Vrabel also talked about getting faster. John Robinson also talked about getting faster. I saw last year's draft, they were laughing whenever they took a running back and everyone thought they were going to dress receiver. in the draft room. So yes, you're right. It is it's line season. It's always line season in the NFL, and this is also coming off of a 2 years ago where they said Vrabel said that AJ Brown wasn't going anywhere, and then we saw what happened draft night. So
Brian Callahan told us yesterday that he hasn't looked at the college tape. Like, okay,
of course he has, of course, yeah. But hey, all that's good, all that's fair because every team's doing it. I would just say they want options at 7, including people picking up the phone and calling them because there are more quarterback needy teams than just the top 3 teams. And who knows if those top 3 teams are going to end up staying where they are.
Yeah, you're right, Jonathan. I mean, this time of season, and we talked about this yesterday, you could look at it, several different ways. You could look at it and take it 100% and say, well, Brian is saying they're going for a pass catcher, or you can say Rand said they're going for a tackle, or they can possibly move down in the draft. I think right now it's sort of like a cloak and dagger. You believe half of what they say. And
Sure.
I think you start to believe more of it as free agency starts to, come up. And what they do in free agency, I think, will be a telltale sign of what they could potentially do in the draft. Because if they go out and they address some of these issues, whether it be the cornerback or the receiver, I don't think there's a tackle out there that they can get. Because, again, Rand said, hey, listen, good tackles, either, if they get released or on the market, it's because, 1, they make too much money, or 2, they probably can't play as well as you may think. If you have a tackle, you're going to keep that guy and you're going to sign him to a long-term deal. So to me, it's what does the Tennessee Titans do in free agency? And then I'm going to reevaluate it and look at what they could potentially do in the draft.
Yeah, and also if you the only other way that you have the tackle hit the market is something like Orlando Brown, or Orlando Brown Jr. And what happened there. But also, Mace, unless you're paying a quarterback and a wide receiver at the same time. I'm just thinking about Minnesota, somewhere else that I don't know about their line situation off the top of my head. That's just an example where you have to pay something. But also the cap going up more than what it was expected to, at least from the outside looking in. I'm sure the cap people and internally got a glimpse of that earlier than what we did. That changes some things, and we don't know what the franchise tag is going to look like. So yeah, I just like knowing that the receiver and quarterback are paired together for a certain amount of time, the allotment. We know that you have Levis with D-Hop for another year, right? Who knows? We got into the other wide receivers last week. I'm just the premier wideout with the rookie quarterback on the rookie salary, I should say. I like that, and that's a model that this head coach has been in, and it's also a model that certainly Carthon has seen from San Francisco with the different wide receivers / not gadget players, but I guess they are gadget players that they brought in, different types of guys, including high-end guys. But they've also invested on their offensive line. You have to protect the QB. Mm-hmm. They're going to have to do better in free agency. They paid some money to players that were backups to play on their offensive line last year. It doesn't have to be the premier guy. And I also should factor in the fact that they have Bill Callahan coaching them. So if he's signing off on a guy that doesn't seem to be that type of dude in the draft or in free agency, to me, that's a high mark that I'm willing to bring him in, make sure he's in this locker room, and allow the best offensive line coach to go out and be the best offensive line coach with him.
Now, what do you make of what Brian Callahan said about Treylon Burks and about the tight ends? Because when I asked him specifically about Chig and Wiley, he seemed like a kid in a candy store with those two guys. It seems like he really loves what he sees out of that tandem of tight ends.
Mace, they're versatile. Mm-hmm. Like I think that's if you're an offensive guy and you've got players in this league with it so specialized that can go out and do different things. I mean, I look at Chigakonkwo and think he can do a lot. He can line up a lot of different areas, and I mean. Kelly was using him in different areas last year. And of course you've got a special teams guy in Wiley that can also play on offense. How versatile is Treylon Burks to you?
I think Treylon Burks is as versatile as he wants to be. I think he play inside, outside. I think he can do the bubble screens.
Is he an outside guy? He's an outside guy?
Yeah, I think he is. He needs to learn how to be more physical. I think sometimes these guys that have bigger bodies, they want to play this sort of basketball game, and maybe your body and your agility, not to say he's not agile, but your agility doesn't warrant that. I would always tell big guys, man, I wish I was 6'4", 6'3". Use that 6'4", 6'3" body and just overpower people. Because if you do it enough, they're not going to, and I promise you this, they're not going to want to press you anymore. If you establish a physicality, you look at all the guys, Terrell Owens, Calvin Johnson, these big, Larry Fitzgerald, they didn't want to press them. Why? Because of the physicality. DK Metcalf, you don't want to press him. Why? Because of the physicality. You 6'3", 6'4", play like you 6'3", 6'4".
I love spitballing this because we're back into Traylon Burks, but I think he's a crucial piece. They have to have him take a big step. Why? So we saw that at Arkansas. Mm-hmm. We saw him do that at Arkansas. And I'm not trying to make excuses for him. I'm trying to learn why it's it's a struggle beyond just out of shape and whatever. How much are the hashes factoring in here, where he can run, get physical, get open with the field? They can use him with the KJ Jefferson rolling. Mm-hmm. In the NFL, the college has played sideline to sideline. NFL is that way too, but it's really down the middle of the field based on where the hash marks are. Mm-hmm. That's why the game is so sped up for the quarterback. How much of that is difficult for a physical receiver to come in the way he was used at Arkansas, get him to the open field and let him beat one guy, different for him?
I know. I'm not sure. There's going to be that adjustment period for every receiver, I think.
Well, that bothers me though if he's still struggling going into year 3.
Well, you got to understand too, Hut. He's been off and on the field. He hasn't really got himself into a rhythm for whatever reason. He hasn't gotten himself into a rhythm of being out there consistently, and then being the number one guy, being targeted, being a part of the game plan. Honestly, I think last year there were a lot of times that I didn't believe that he was a Vrabel guy. So if you're not a head coach's guy, especially in that system with him as head coach, you're not going to get many opportunities. He's not.
I mean, he did get opportunities in week 1.
Yeah.
They were throwing the football to Hopkins, and that was it. And they threw the football against the Saints 40 times on purpose. I mean, it's just and he made some catches in that game. But I mean, again, like I'm with you, man. It is to me, it's a head scratcher because now we find out he's got a reset. He has an offensive coach that wants to throw the football a lot. I mean, he starts with answering his offensive philosophy with the pass game and mentions 3 aspects of it, including efficiency and getting the ball out fast. It's time to see what he's got. And I agree. They have to view him as an asset because they don't have many options in regards to what they want to do and build other positions up. By the way, you mentioned 3 positions: wide receiver, offensive line, and corner. It's a good year for the top 100 at all 3 spots. And the Titans, well, they've got 2 crucial picks in the first and second round, and then that 4th rounder, if they can move up or move around, that'll be the area that they do it.
Jonathan Hutton is with us. So, Hutton, you got me thinking here with the tight ends, and I guess I had not really heard him talk about this. Maybe he has. I'm talking about Callahan.
Yeah.
How does he like to use the tight ends in his system? Because we're used to, in this market, in the Derrick Henry era, if they're not using flat out a fullback, they were using 2 tight ends a higher percentage of the time than a lot of teams. So what's Callahan's way? Because that plays into the question of Wiley and Okonkwo, because we know I don't know if either one of those guys is the prototypical blocking tight end, but maybe they're not asked to block as much in this system.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in this right now with this personnel, Willie, if you're just watching film of your team, you're 12 personnel, right?
Yeah.
You're going
one
too
back,
tight
2 tight ends. Yeah.
Just because of the depth at receiver currently. Again, just evaluating this team right now. So I would be high on the tight ends. We spoke on Okonkwo throughout the season as where has he been, and then we saw a gradual uptick in what we were seeing. He was going through some drop issues catching the football. No, I think he's the talent everyone should be excited about in the building if you're just coming in. And from Wiley's standpoint, it's the size, it's the length, it's the ability. If you watch his highlights at Cincy, it's the ability to go and get the football. Titans don't have many receivers like that. So, yeah, I would treat them. I think they're viewing through the lens of, especially Callahan, viewing them through the lens of receivers more than blockers. And that's another factor that hopefully Traylon Burks buys into, just tying back to the mentality of wide receiver in the Titans offense. It's now reversed. It's flipped.
Yeah.
They're going to talk about blocking, but it's going to be it's going to be down the list of requirements. You've got to bring it, but it's not item 0 at the top of the list for what you want and qualify to be a Tennessee Titans wide receiver in this offense anymore. That should energize all these guys because it's not banging hats as much as it is getting open and running with the football.
I'll be curious what the run-pass balance is in this offense compared to what we've seen before. But presuming that Derrick Henry is not back, which I've heard absolutely nothing that would indicate to me that
I don't think he is.
He's coming.
Yeah.
So this is a new era. So is it going to be based on the league average? Like they've run well above the league average most years over the last 5, 6, 7 years. So what's
they're
it
one of
be
those
this year?
teams that invests. Yeah, right.
And I do think if you're going to be running more 12 personnel, if you're going to be running more 2 tight ends, or if you're going to be running
Well, they
2
may
tight end
not.
sets in general, you probably need
they
another
may
tight
not.
end, no?
Yes. You're going Brock Bowers there. Brock Bowers, though, would also be viewed as a receiver. Again, I'm not drafting Brock Bowers to be a traditional tight end. The traditional tight end now is Kelsey, Kittle. No one talks about their blocking. They're physical. They can. I mean, you have to. But no one's talking about, oh, look at the block he set for this guy. No, you're putting the football in their hands, and that's why you'll be drafting Bowers there too. And let me say, when I say they invest, they're one of the teams. I'm going back to Willy. They're one of the teams that invests in running backs. There's a litany that they're going to have another Zoom call and complain about their pay again this offseason, I bet, because there's a big
Guaranteed.
group of vet, and nothing will come of it. There's a big group of running backs again this year, and if you're just in the past. If you're just making a list of here are the teams who actually want to pay running back, it was the Titans. It can't be anymore based on the philosophy and how they describe this offense. That's why Henry's not coming back. And why would he want to be back? Why would he want to be back in this offense, right?
I mean, it's a fair point. It's a fair point. Jonathan Hutton is with us, Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Hutton, I heard PK talking about this morning when he was with Robbie and Joe, that Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan are coming back from Indianapolis for the groundbreaking ceremony and are going to be doing the rest of the interviews on Zoom. Do you have a problem with that?
No. But Chad Brinker's there, correct?
I know that Anthony Robinson is there.
Then Chad Brinker's going to be there. So Anthony Robinson will be below. If we're just doing the tree, he's on the side of Rand Carthon. And Brinker is, if you're just doing the job description, Brinker's there too. Yeah. I mean, right now, Sean McVay. By the way, the Rams have been drafting great, 3rd round and below. Screw these picks or whatever they said. They've been drafting guys
in the first round.
They don't have to, but they draft the right guys. McVay's not at the combine. Period. Mm-hmm. He didn't go. There's other coaches that aren't going. So they got their staff together. Brinker's there. It's also the trend that all of a sudden you've never called plays and you're a head coach calling plays, especially off the McVay tree. Based on what the teams who win are doing, the Titans haven't been doing that lately. It's clear to me, though, that Brinker, in regards to whatever they're doing at the Senior Bowl, he was there, and whatever they're doing at the Combine, they went. They discussed some things with players they wanted to discuss, and now they're going back for the groundbreaking. They could also go back if they wanted to. It's not that far of a drive or a quick little Amy Adams Strunk jet tour of northern Tennessee and southern Kentucky. It's not that bad. And my guess is if there's 1 or 2 players that they want to talk to and pinpoint, they've got the 7th pick, and they can already bring in guys that they can really grill at the facility or at their pro day.
Jonathan,
I would be there, by the way. I would be there.
Yeah, and I look at that, I know Sean McVay isn't there. I know Kyle Shanahan isn't there. I know Robert Saleh isn't there. Mike McCarthy isn't there. But are those teams winning because they're not going to the Combine?
No, they're winning because they're drafting well.
And they're winning because they have because drafting well and the quarterbacks, at least as far as some of them are concerned.
Yeah, right. But they're also bringing in play. They kind of know what they're doing, but also they're drafting high, so that they have.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the Jets and others. They kind of know what they need. Jets need an offensive lineman, right? They need to boost their offensive lineman for Aaron Rodgers. They're all in with him, but different circumstances. But the combine is it's more about medical and the one-on-one interviews. You can interview literally anybody anytime. There's no restrictions at the Senior Bowl. There are restrictions, 15 minutes or whatever at the combine, and you can bring guys in. You can go to the pro days. You can send scouts out. And you can Zoom all the time. There are different ways to learn the player, and I mean, these guys are so scripted through their agents now. It's really tough to figure out who you're getting when they walk through the door in that amount of time. You can't grill them on the X's and O's, and you can't really pinpoint, okay, what happened off the field here in this incident, because then the bell rings and you're off to the safety dance where the other guy comes in the room.
Jonathan,
I would still be there. I would still be there.
Right. Yeah, I hear you, and I know that they all get the training, the media training, the interview training, but still. You don't get that many opportunities.
Can I also say, if it's about coming back for the groundbreaking, they were told to for the photo op.
Right. I don't think that was their decision.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think they care too much about these big scissors.
Yeah, that came from up above.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't want to judge the sole decision on Rand Carthon choosing not to do it or whatever. But yeah, I mean, these guys, their livelihood is centered around ball. Not about construction, but it's a big moment in the franchise, and there's a photo to be done, and they're back in Nashville. They're doing their job.
Jonathan Hutton, Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow. Hut, appreciate you as always, and we'll chat next week.
Yeah, always enjoy this. Have a great rest of the week, guys.
All right, thanks, Hutton. You're the best. Jonathan Hutton, Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow. We'll react to what Jonathan Hutton had to say coming up next. Plus, new NFLPA report card. How did the Titans do? We'll get into that coming up next. We'll get into your phones. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet. Tomorrow is your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night, then you will win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Rexroad tomorrow morning at 8:45 a.m. Pick to Click, brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. So the NFLPA has been doing this new thing. I want to say it's in the last few years. The NFLPA report card usually comes out around this time of year, where the NFLPA will send out a poll to every player in the NFL and ask to grade on different categories. Treatment of families, just kind of like things that are applicable to players, off the field kind of things. Treatment of families, food and cafeteria, nutritionist and dietitian, locker room, training staff, weight room, strength coaches, team travel, head coach, and ownership. And all of this is public. The individual players' responses aren't public, but they combine all of their responses and they do an average of what each player and each individual team, what they had to grade each individual team. The Tennessee Titans overall ranked 18th of 32. Not great, not terrible, just kind of smack dab average in the middle. Before we kind of get into the specifics of it, D-Mase, when you were a player, did anything like this exist? And if it did, how seriously would you have taken it?
I think because the NFLPA always have some type of questionnaire, whether it be about, playing surfaces, other stadiums, your stadium, they've always had sort of that questionnaire phase. And what happens is when the PA comes in, this is typically how it happens now. I don't know how it happens now. The PA comes in and they have their huge meeting once a year. And there's a lot of stuff they need to go over. They may come in, come once prior to that or after that with a little smaller meeting, but typically they have this huge meeting after practice, and they're going over things about the collective bargaining and new rules and whatnot, and what players need to do and who they need to contact, all this other stuff. But then they give you questionnaires to fill out, and typically guys are, if they're going to err, guys typically err in favor of the organization. Because you don't want it to come out that your organization is the worst organization. So typically guys are err on, yes, we're great. Yes, we do this. Yes, they do that. Yada, 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 whatever. But I think guys are starting to, be a little bit more honest about their assessments of, the facility, the, cafeteria, the weight room, because it's all anonymous. The NFL is not going to take a questionnaire, and then make it public with people's names on it. They're not going to do that.
Yeah, they're not going to throw players under the bus.
Absolutely. So what they do is they give you this questionnaire and they tell you to fill it out honestly. No one's going to know who filled it out. So guys typically, if they don't err toward the organization, they typically just fill it out honestly. So you got to take what these guys are saying, and you got to take it honest. These guys, they may listen. I loved being here in Nashville and playing in Nashville, but Willy, I tell you, we didn't have the best setup. We didn't have the best setup. Yeah, we didn't have the best setup for the first couple of years now.
I mean, your setup at Michigan State was probably head and shoulders.
Oh, absolutely. It came here, and it was like, oh, man, this is how the NFL is? Oh, my goodness. I should have stayed for a fifth year in college. That's the case. So our setup wasn't great. But that doesn't mean we didn't enjoy being where we were as a team, because it's more so about me and you than, the stuff around us. We got to stay together. Actually, it made us stronger as a team because we didn't have all those things other teams had at that time. So then we moved into a new facility and it was much better. So I'm sure guys filled it out honestly. I know I filled mine out honestly. So when you see, say for instance, Kansas City, and everybody's just thinking, oh man, everything must be perfect in Kansas City because they're winning championships. That doesn't mean everything is perfect. That doesn't mean that they have the best lunchroom in the National Football League. That doesn't mean that everybody loves the owner or the GM. That just means everybody is playing for one another.
Kansas City actually had significantly worse grades than the Titans did.
Exactly. So when you look at it, don't look at it and say, nah, these guys don't. I mean, no, they're answering them. I'm pretty sure majority of these guys are answering it honestly. Like if I sit down and think, our cafeteria is horrible. Back in, when I was playing here, a lot of guys would order food during lunch. Not to say that the food wasn't good. It was, but it was just the whole setup of how the food was, the cafeteria.
You were right by the mall.
Exactly. So, and then
Food court,
it was like the first 2 years we were eating out of
slice.
We were eating out of tray. We were in the trailers. They had these hot plates. You come in and grab your food. Guys are like, we had better in college. So I'm going to give you a D because I've experienced better at my previous stop. So when guys answer these questions and you see these grades, take them for what they're worth. Believe that these guys are answering it as honest as they possibly can. When you see D's and F's and A's and B's, these guys are telling you, like, listen, this is how we feel. We feel it can be better. Travel. We feel it can be better. We used to come on a plane. I'm not going to say what team, but we would come on a plane and we have to walk through everybody else that had nothing to do with the product on the field as far as sweat, blood, and tears. They were all in the seats in the front, and we were all walking past them, and then we had to be seated behind there. Guys complained about that. Guys were like, nah, this ain't how this shit work. We should be the ones, and everybody else should be in the back. We the one that's working hard. So stuff like that does, and then you're talking about big guys. When you say travel, big guys, and you put if you got 3 seats and you're squashing 3 big guys or 2 big guys and a small guy, after I've just played a 2.5 hour, 3 hour game and I got to ride back like this, seriously, come on, we got to do better.
The setup you guys had in Memphis was, I know, a particular problem for remember there's like, if your family wanted to go to the game, there's like a bus you take to the Liberty Bowl. That was just a nightmare.
It was because guys understand now these teams are making so much money, or they're worth so much money now. Why can't the accommodations be A1?
Yeah,
because you can do it,
and you're only making more.
Exactly, you're only making more money.
Peacock is in on it. Amazon paid a cajillion dollars,
and you write it all off anyway.
Yeah, there's money to go around, and I do.
The system is built for you to break even on day one. Like if you're losing money, it's on you.
Yeah, something wrong with you and your business plan.
Right.
Like even if you lose every game, you're getting so much money from the league up front, and the salary cap to your players is set up so. But you can't fail if you're in the club. Right?
Right.
Once you in unless you do something
so there's
stupid.
No reason that you should have the players not taken care of, within reason.
And I do think that this is more than anything a message to the owner of, look, this is genuinely how we feel. That I think that these report cards, and specifically the Titans report card, should mean more to anyone Amy Adams Strunk. That she looks at it, the 2 categories that stick out to me in a negative way more than anything: treatment of families, the Titans get a D+, which is actually 17th in the league. I think that should also be a message to the league that if you're right smack dab in the middle, kind of average, and the grade is a D+, you need to be doing more to accommodate for families. The reason that, the breakdown of the Titans treatment of families at D+. They're one of 12 teams that do not provide a family room during games, and they do provide daycare on game days. I mean, that means something. That's important.
That's very
to
important.
make sure that your families are taken care of. If I read this and I'm Amy Adams Strunk, and I do believe that Amy Adams Strunk is willing to cough up the cash to make the facilities better. I mean, didn't she just spend a lot of money on the cafeteria? That means something to her.
And those things are probably up. Now, when it comes to the families now, that building, we all know that building was built on a cheap, hence they're getting another building now. I'm pretty sure in this next stadium there will be a room designated for the families. They can go in and wait, because sometimes these guys takes, from the time the game ends to the time they get to their families, it's probably an hour, a half, 2. So
Media,
you got
showers.
so you got your family out there, and if you're injured, if you got injured, now you got to go see the doctor. So I would rather have my family in a room designated for them, television, stuff for the kids to do, and I'm sure that will be in the next building. Stuff like that, guys pay attention to. You know why they pay attention to it? Because the wives come back and they like, seriously? This is how things are? I got to wait for you 2 hours, which I don't mind waiting, but we're waiting just in the hallway. Just standing there waiting on you.
We're sitting in the car.
Exactly, or sitting in the car. Like, there should be better accommodations. Everybody can't get a suite. Everybody don't have the money to get a suite. Fortunately, for me, it was Samari and myself. We went in half. We got a suite, so our families can stay up there until we get ready to come down, until we're ready to go. But all families are not like that.
And that's also money coming out of your pocket when it should be accommodations by the team. But there's another category in here that if I'm reading this as Amy Adams Strunk, I think to myself, I need to be better. I need to do more for my team. And we'll get into that coming up next. We'll get into your thoughts on this as well. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We're broadcasting from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. Hey, Preds fans, don't miss tonight's Smashville Live show at Brewhouse South in Cool Springs at 6 p.m. See your Predators star players up close and personal, plus get autographs and pictures. This week's special guests are Michael McCarron, Big Sexy, and Dante Fabro. Smashville Live is brought to you by the Black Abbey Brewing Company and ESPN Bet Sportsbook. So the NFLPA, over the last couple of years, has put out an annual team report card voted on by the players of team and player accommodations, whether it's cafeterias or travel or the training room. The Titans rank 18th of 32 teams. Not great, but there's one that stands out in particular, D+ for the treatment of families. One that stands out to me, team travel gets an F. Says only 63% of the players feel like they have a comfortable amount of personal space during flights. That's 28th overall. And it says they're one of 7 teams that make some of their players have roommates the night before the game. If I'm Amy Adams Strunk, I look at that and say, okay, what can I do to improve that? You're traveling a lot. You're sore. Your players are hurt. You want to take care of your players on team travel.
Well, I mean,
30th ranked in team travel, by the way.
If you don't want to have a roommate, then this was my experience. I'm trying to think back. My first couple years, I did have a roommate, and I hated it. Not that I hated the person that I roomed with, but I just hated having a roommate. I'm like, man, I did that life. In college, I had a roommate, Now I got to have a roommate as a grown man with a little change in my pocket, playing for an organization that's worth a bunch of money. I got to have a roommate. But as I started to get older in the game, if you want to have a room for yourself, then you have to pay half of it, and then you can have a room, and that's cool because you just write it off in taxes and you'll be fine. So as I started to get a little older, I always had my own room, and there are a lot of other guys, if they wanted to have their room, they could have their own room, but they would have to pay for half of it. The organization would pay for the other half. So it's one of those deals where guys are like, hey, the choice is, I don't mind having a roommate. Some guys just don't mind. They buddy up with somebody and they don't mind because their thing is, I don't have to pay for the room, so it's good.
Yeah.
But other guys, older guys, are like, no, I don't want a roommate. I'm a grown man.
And aren't some teams sort of split? The younger players get roommates, and then as you graduate up and you have more tenure,
That
you
makes
get the
sense.
privilege of having your own room. Some teams do it that way.
That makes sense to me. But as far as this is concerned, D-Mase, I'm intrigued to get your thoughts on this because, when we talk about free agency, like when Amy Adams Strunk said, Rand Carthon makes the Tennessee Titans a destination for the league's top talent. Like, does he, or is it the money and the potential to win Super Bowls that gets free agents to certain places? From a player perspective, how much do these things, the cafeteria, the weight rooms, the locker rooms, the treatment of families, how much is that a factor? Of course, we always talk about money being the factor, but you've been there.
If it wasn't a factor, then they wouldn't be redoing that building that they're redoing their practice facility.
Fair
If
point.
that was not a factor, they would have kept it status quo the way it was, and it is what it is. But no, it is a big factor in guys walking in and envisioning themselves there every day, because you spend more time from, let's just say, May to January, and if you go to the Super Bowl, talk about February, you spend more time with those guys than you do with your family, honestly.
It is true.
Because you're there from, some guys get there, if you're a quarterback, you're getting there at 5:30 in the morning, and you're not leaving until 6, 7 o'clock at night. So you're spending all that time with the guys. You're not spending much time with your family. The off season is for your family. So if that is indeed the case, I need to make this as comfortable as possible for the players. The accommodations need to be there for the players. Once they're in this building, we want to make sure they do not want to leave. Now, for me, being here in Nashville, going from the trailers, going to the new facility, that was a total upgrade for us. It was like, okay, this is what it's supposed to look like. Even though there were still areas that probably should have been a little bit better, but they did what they needed to do to make everything, to accommodate the players. But then once I left, and I saw another place, I was like, man, it seems like
a whole new level.
They're in 1950 and this place is in the year 2000. You know, not to say that it was bad. It was just the upgrades, the accommodations.
There's a lot of different levels.
Listen, I want it as players. You want to be even if you're working at a big Fortune 500 company, and you know you got to be there for 8, 9, 10 hours, whatever it is. You want to walk into that building and feel, okay, I have everything that I need. I don't have to be some millionaire, but as an employee, if I walk into this Fortune 500 company, it's a big company making a lot of money, I should walk in, the cafeteria should be nice. There should be areas for us to lounge and relax. We don't have to leave the building and go on break. Certain things should be there for the employees, because if you have happy employees, your business will prosper. It will. If you have happy players, hardworking players, your team will prosper. I walked into that building, and the cafeteria, it may not seem like nothing to people, but when you can go into a cafeteria and you can go up there and whatever your mind wants, you can get it. That's like, wow. From a nutritional standpoint, I want this. I want this. We got a nutritionist that's coming in and helping us. The Titans did have that, mind you. They did have a nutritionist.
They got fairly good grades of nutrition and dietitians. 12th overall.
Exactly. So they've always had that. Mm-hmm. But when you can have that and a nice lunchroom where, you know, the people that are making your food, you know them, they know you. They know exactly what you need to eat, and they have it for you, ready for you to go. That's one less thing you have to worry about. I don't have to leave the building to then go get me something to eat. All those things matter. Those things are little things, but they matter in the big scheme of things. Training room, weight rooms, all of this stuff. If I need something, okay, give us a couple of days. We will have it for you. And damn sure did they have it for us.
And like you said, is it because of these things? Are these things going to show up in the win and loss column? Mm-mm. Not necessarily, because the Kansas City Chiefs had horrendous grades, and they won back-to-back Super Bowls. So it's not necessarily the difference of wins and losses and making the playoffs and not making the playoffs, but it's being taken care of by your ownership.
But you can afford it because the two places that were, one place that it was just like horrible. In the sense of I walked in and I'm like, man, this is where y'all practice? Well, two places that I went to. Houston was horrid. Houston had one of the worst, and I mean one of the worst facilities in regards to their lunchroom. It was nasty.
It sounds like they've done some upgrades.
And they might have done some upgrades, yes. But back, it was not that the people were bad. It was just the whole accommodations, everything. It was just like, seriously?
Sloppy joes for lunch.
Exactly. Like,
makes sense.
It was just, and then the other place, it was like, seriously? This? But they had, the one thing they had that nobody else had was Tom Brady.
Yeah, right.
That's one thing they had. And you know what Kansas City has that nobody else has?
Patrick Mahomes.
So
and it's not because of the lunchroom you have Patrick Mahomes.
It's not because of the lunchroom. People can look past the lunchroom. Why? Because you got Patrick Mahomes. Right. That's what's winning. But guys don't like the accommodations. Mm-hmm. But hell, we got Patrick Mahomes. So they can ride that. But when they don't have Patrick no more, or New England doesn't have time no more.
Into that phase,
now you have to start
full throttle.
Exactly. Now you have to start accommodating, making some accommodations, because if you don't have that X factor on your team, why am I coming here?
Well, we call it a game of inches for a reason, and it's not even just talking about what we see on the field. It's every single teeny tiny little advantage. Even just an inch of a razor's edge of advantage that you can get in this league. Wouldn't you take it?
If guys didn't care, if it was perceived guys didn't care about, where they're working, their workplace, then you wouldn't see so many new facilities popping up. You would.
Quickly wanted to get your thoughts on this. Text phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com. Ricky says, then they can go sit in their luxury vehicles after the game. I feel like we're being nitpicky.
Again, I can't do that. It's just, to answer that question, it's just like, seriously, dude? I mean, okay, I don't care how luxury my car is. Do I want to eat in my car? That's
drive-through.
No.
That question right there
the
is a question, and I'm going to say this, and it's not that the person is uninformed question. That's what it is. It's an uninformed statement. That's what it is. When you haven't been there and you make comments like that, that's an uninformed statement. I go back to, I don't care if it's a football team, Enron, whatever, Apple. I don't want to have to eat in my car. Who does that? Now, if I choose to eat in my car because I want to get away from everybody else, that's different. But I don't want to have to. I'm looking at the lunchroom, I'm like, damn. Bugs here, trash everywhere. They hadn't emptied the trash. The food's nasty. I got to go to McDonald's and eat in my car. Who wants to do that? Nobody. And I guarantee the person that's working, if he wouldn't want to do that or she wouldn't want to do that, it's their business.
Also, I think that we need to remember that we always focus on the players that make a lot of money. There's players in this league
Exactly.
that don't make a ton of money.
But I don't understand this. Why are y'all mad at the millionaires? Shouldn't y'all be mad at the billionaires? This is why this country is so the way it is sometimes. You're mad at the guy underneath the guy. You should be mad at the guy. Shouldn't you? Like, I should be mad at the billionaire, not the millionaire. Why are you mad at the millionaire or the thousandaire or just a hardworking person? Shouldn't you be mad at the guy at the top or the girl at the top that's making all the decisions? Where have we gone as a country when we blame the people in the middle and not the people at the top?
Player rep D-Mase coming out. He's coming out.
I don't understand that, man. People think. That's why we're so trapped in the situation we're in now.
We live in a society, D-Mase.
I'm sorry.
It's the last time somebody asked about eating in your car.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't want to eat in my car. You damn it, it's a luxury car, and I don't want to eat in it, okay? Unless I choose to. If you ask my ex-wife, she don't let nobody eat in her car. Nobody, not even the kids eat in her car to this day.
But if I did have to eat in a car, I would want to eat in your car.
Oh, yeah. If I had to eat in my car, I would like to eat. I mean, I wouldn't mind eating in my car, but I don't want to have to eat in my car.
They have good cup holders. Good cup holders.
Listen to my own music.
Seat warmers.
Yeah.
The nice seat warmers.
I'm sure you got many massage
But I've been
chairs
blessed,
in there.
truly. I've been blessed. And what I say sometimes, just take it with a grain of salt, except what I just said about the whole being mad at the millionaire when you should be mad at the billionaire.
Don't take that with a grain of salt.
Don't be mad at us. Be mad at them.
Exactly. Very fair point. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We heard from Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan yesterday. And do they want us to think something? Is it what they're going to do? It's this time of year that gets all of our minds wrapped up like a pretzel, and we'll talk about it coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025-1063 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game and The Game Nashville app. We're streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. And we heard from Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon yesterday, and they were doing the full media tour of the NFL Combine 2024. We had Rand Carthon and Chase and Big Joe. We had Brian Callahan on our show yesterday. They did a national press conference from the NFL Combine. They did availabilities and appearances on a ton of different podcasts and radio shows. They were talking to everybody yesterday. And the overwhelming sentiment that I think we all got yesterday was there was a whole lot of talk about wide receivers. A whole lot of talk about getting faster, about stretching the field, about finding guys who, to take a word from Rand Carthon, can find the paint, guys who can score. We heard about, hey, look, if there's a receiver there at 7, this is a deep offensive line class. So many topics of conversation pointed back to the wide receiver. And I was listening to Robbie and Joe this morning, and Joe, cranky pants, said, well, of course they're talking about wide receiver, because everyone was asking them about wide receiver. And I thought, I don't know, even questions in which they were not asked about wide receiver, they still always came back to wide receiver. But we touched on this yesterday. Mm-hmm. Surely it's not that obvious. Surely on February 27th, you don't know what you're going to do. And if you did know what you were going to do, 1, you'd be kind of stupid. And 2, you're not going to let us know. Because we don't know what the Titans are going to do. Because they could be telling us all signs point toward receiver when really they're in the back of their minds thinking, we're going to take a tackle. But the reality is, they probably don't know what they're going to do. And they shouldn't know what they're going to do. Because we haven't even seen players work out yet at the NFL Combine. We haven't seen pro days. Still have a lot of interviews to go through. So as much as I want to know what they're going to do, as much as I'm sure everybody wants to know what the Tennessee Titans are going to do, they don't know what they're going to do, nor should they know what they're going to do. If they go into the draft today saying we're going to take a receiver no matter what, but Marvin Harrison, Rome Odunze, and Malik Neighbors go 4, 5, 6, you going to take a receiver that's ranked as the 17th best player in this draft at 7? That's not very smart.
No, it's not. I mean, if one of those guys are up there and, say your top tackle, and we've discussed this before, say your top tackle is gone, then now you got a decision to make. I don't think it would be, a wrong decision if you went and took one of those receivers, because I'm sure you would have them rated that high or something, and maybe even higher if one of the 3 top guys were available to you and say that tackle wasn't. So whether you stay put at that 7th position or not, you have to address the wide receiver position along with other positions. I think, if you're ranking them, honestly, to me, it would be offensive line, secondary, and then receiver to me. Again, because I just think that I'm putting more of a premium on the guy that can stop you rather than the guy that can go get the ball, because of the way the offenses are geared in college now, these receivers are more pro-ready now, because a lot of what they're doing is sort of implemented and played and done in the NFL, bubble screens, all this other stuff. 20, 30 years ago, you didn't see all this stuff, what they're doing now. They're doing it because a lot of this is what they're doing in college. It is making that transition a little bit easier for these receivers to come in here and ready to go. So whether you draft, if you can't get them in the first round, then you draft them in the second round. And I think you still are able to get a guy that can be a guy that can come in here and be an impact player for you right away, depending on how you use him. You got to see his strengths, what he's able to do within your offense, and I'm going to put him in that position, especially early on, to do just that. I'm not going to ask him to do more than what he should do. Now, as you start to go, then yes, more get on your plate. But right now, these are the things that we want you to do. I just think these receivers are more NFL ready than they have been, in the last 15, 20, 30 years.
Just those 3 that we kind of view as the top, or
I think as a whole, I think these receivers now are more ready to play from not necessarily, I think from a physical standpoint in regards to what we're asking you to do. Because what do they do in college, y'all? They spread them out, 3, 4 wides. You're running quick slants, bubble screens, shallow crosses. Just read the defense, find a hole. We're going to throw it to you. Sit down in the hole. I'm not going to say it's a little bit easier, but when I am asking you to do the same things that you were doing in college, you should be able to pick up quickly on that, shouldn't you? Mm-hmm. I mean, we're not asking you to do something, we're not asking like 30 years ago, a receiver from the Big Ten, we're not playing the same brand of football as they are in the Pac-12. You know, it's a little bit more wide open in the Pac-12, and it's a little bit more like in a phone booth than the Big Ten.
Well, you remember Irving Fryer for those great Nebraska teams that ran they ran the option.
He didn't have many catches.
That was good. That was the thing. Like Irving Fryer was a high first-round pick, wide receiver at Nebraska,
he was the first
and they
pick
never had to
draft.
throw the ball. But he would make big plays. You could see the flash, but as far as number of balls thrown his way, wasn't that many. They didn't have to throw.
Exactly.
They're winning 45-0 just running it with the option and everything. Mm-hmm. I agree with to your point, Caroline. I think philosophically, D-Mase is dead on. I think what you got to do is get down into the weeds, too, and say, let's take the three guys that could be a wide receiver sitting there at 7. If one of them drops, it depends on who it drops, right? If it's a guy, what if we really like that guy? That's different than, well, we had that guy 3rd, and now we're getting down as an overall rating. It's not as high as we have Alt or whoever we have the first tackle. That the person matters as much as the position. But I know a lot of people are like, you got to take a wide receiver or you got to take a tackle. Well, the people is really where the answer is, right?
And the kind of player. Because let's say Joe Alt goes at 5 to the Chargers. Mm-hmm. Well, is Ola Fashanu, is he the player? Is he the second best tackle? Is he the 6th or 7th best player in the draft? Because if you view him as the 12th best player in the draft and you went into it saying we have to take a tackle, well, then you're not getting very good bang for your buck with the 12th best player at the 7th overall pick when you might have graded Malik Neighbors as the 6th best player and he's sitting there at 7. So I don't think that the Titans should go into this draft saying we have to do this or we have to take this position. I think their only really frame of mind should be we have to take the best player available that's going to be able to help us. We have to just get a good player. And we talked about this so much yesterday when we were chatting with Brian Callahan of there are so many parallels to this situation with the Titans than it was with the Cincinnati Bengals in 2021. So you could look at it and say, well, Brian Callahan, who was incredibly involved in the scouting process and the drafting process with the Bengals in 2021, they were faced with the Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase debate. And the Cincinnati Bengals went with Jamar Chase. So you could say the Titans are going to go wide receiver. But Brian Callahan clarified it's just not as simple as that. This was Brian Callahan yesterday.
Do you view Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors or both as elite touchdown scorers in the National Football League?
Yeah, those guys are really impressive, a little bit that I've seen. Obviously, I'm kind of just starting the college scouting process, but, man, those guys are pretty dynamic, both very different skill sets and styles, but they can both play football. And, I think one of the things that's, unique and probably different than it was in this current situation is in Cincinnati we were picking at 5, and we were picking against 2 players that were both pretty well consensus that they were going to be all pro caliber players. And so the talent level was equal, and all things being equal, we chose to go with the guy that could score points. I don't know that that's necessarily going to be the case every year in the draft. And so picking at 7, there might be a tackle that is a better player ultimately than the receiver, or a receiver that is better than whatever tackle is available. And in that case, you have to make that decision. I don't think that you can take that situation in Cincinnati and necessarily totally parallel it to where we are now. It makes for good conversation, but I do think the situations are dramatically different, and the types of players are going to be very different. But the good thing is there's a lot of really good ones to pick from when you're picking at 7.
Look, it could go exactly how it went in Cincinnati, where the Titans are choosing between a tackle and a receiver, and they decide to go receiver, and then that's the catalyst for an offense to really go to the next level, and you have your next Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase for the next 10 years, and everything is great. Or it might not go that way. And I think that what Brian Callahan is saying there is don't always look at it just, apples and oranges. Or apples and apples, rather. It could be apples to oranges. Because I looked at the Cincinnati 2021 draft, which I thought was kind of interesting. You know what pick they had in the second round?
What was that?
38. Which, interesting. So they had 5 and 38. The Titans have 7 and 38. The Bengals ended up trading back to 46 in the second round. They took a tackle in the second round, which is kind of how we've talked about it, of take a receiver in the first round, maybe you can find a good tackle in the second and be coached up by Bill Callahan, if we do believe that he is as great of an offensive line whisperer as he is. But the tackle that the Bengals took in the second round has played 5 games in the last 2 years. So we could look at it and say everything worked out for Cincinnati, and if the Titans do take a receiver in the second round and they find themselves in the Super Bowl and the AFC Championship in the following 2 years, you would sign up for that, absolutely. But it's not all the same. You don't know if that player is a Jamar Chase. You don't know if you're going to find your tackle in the second round, because that game-changing player that you might find in the first round might not be a receiver at all.
But not even that. And this is the biggest difference, and I don't think we're talking about it. And I'm surprised that Brian Callahan didn't bring it up. Jamar Chase played with his quarterback in college. That means a lot. You know, I already have this rapport.
Maybe that was a little bit of what would put you
that tilted
over
probably
the top.
the scale. Like, okay, Joe Burrow, we saw what Jamar Chase was the head dog in that historic offense from a passing standpoint. I'm just talking about the receivers. Now, Jefferson has turned out to be the best, but Jamar Chase was that dude in college. So I am going, when I'm looking at the tackle or the receiver in this situation, I may lean more toward the receiver because they have a history, a really, really good working history together. They know one another. So the likelihood of this working is higher. I know it. Why? Because I've seen it. These two guys are on the same page. It shouldn't be no different from when they, from college to the pro. It shouldn't be no different in regards to the rapport that they've already built together. And it has shown. Burrow and Chase, they have a rapport that you usually don't see with a young receiver and a young quarterback because it takes years to sort of build that up. Well, it seemed like they hit the ground running. Why? Because they played together in college. And that's something that makes
invaluable.
it different. Yeah, that's something different, and I'm surprised Brian
That's
didn't
why I
bring
think
that
the
up.
people is more important than the philosophy. Like the Bengals could find themselves in that very same situation and go the other way just because they feel more comfortable with the person,
Right.
as opposed to we got to take the touchdown maker as opposed to the lineman.
And
I think all of it's got to
see
weigh in.
That line of thinking, but I don't think that you can apply that philosophy to everything or to this draft because it's not just in a vacuum. It's not what Brian Callahan viewed in Jamar Chase as a future All-Pro in the NFL. If you don't view Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors as that, then you don't do that.
But I think you still can do it because
Unless it's the best player available.
Yeah, but we got to remember too, it's not just about the production and everything else, because I think it was when Ram was talking, he did the thing for SI, I believe, that he said, listen, you take players to the head coach and you say, hey, listen, coach, this is what you were looking for. This guy will work well in our system. He'd be perfect. But he's going to drive you crazy too. Like he's going to get on your nerves. Now it's up to the coach to decide whether, okay, I want this player sounds good for my system and he may work, but no, I don't like his I'm not going to be able to deal with some of the things that you have come with me.
Right.
The scouting part where the head coaches probably tell you, yeah, he can be a little bit of a hothead. If this ain't happened or if this happened, he's known to fly off. Okay, now I take all of that and I think, yeah, you may work in this system, but when things are not going well, then this is what I'm going to have to deal with. No, I don't want to deal with that. You're a good player, great player, but from a relationship standpoint, I am not going to be able to work with you because you don't seem to be coachable.
Which is why you don't go into the draft nor even the combine with we're going this position.
Exactly.
Because you never know. And I view it, and I'm glad you brought that up. This was on an SI article written by Albert Breer. Excuse me. No, it was not Albert Breer. It was
what was the guy's name? Arthur.
It was Ben Arthur.
Ben Arthur
of Fox Sports. He sat down, who used to cover the Titans for the Tennessean. He sat down with Rand Carthon, and Rand talked about when he was in San Francisco, he would say, hey, Kyle, this is the kind of guy, the style that I think you like, but I think you wouldn't like his personality. That's what I want Rand to do here, because I don't view it as Brian Callahan coaching Rand's players. I view it like Rand is picking Brian Callahan's players. And he should understand, what do you want? Not just in a player, but to Willy's point, in a person as well. You don't know that going into the combine.
And I think that's why, they are pushing the relationship narrative so hard, because you're trying to build relationship with potential draftees or potential free agents. And if you can build that relationship with them and you know what makes them tick and what kind of throws them off, now that's an added advantage for us, because now I can take it to my head coach and say, Coach, this guy's great, but I've gotten to know him, and I've talked with his position coach. He's a little bit of a hothead. I don't know, Coach. He may get on your nerves. And then the coach says, you know what? Nah, I think we're going to pass on that guy. We can get somebody else. That's the relationship part that we gotta really look at. Right? He's building. They talk so much about relationships because it does matter when you're scouting these guys to find out everything about them, or you're trying to get a free agent to come in here. Before I bring you in this building, I need to know who you are as a person.
It does seem very much so that is a narrative that the Titans are pushing. Ran as a relationship builder, because in the official Titans podcast, they were asking him about it. It's one thing that Brian Callahan, one of the first questions he was asked about working with Rand, well, Rand, he's an expert relationship builder. It's just like the first thing out of everyone's mouth when they talk about Rand Carthon, which is fine. But I don't think this time next year, if you go 4-13, anyone's going to care about the relationships that Rand Carthon builds. It's about winning football games. And the relationship and the frou-frou, that's great and all. Win football games.
Yeah, Rand need to go get his own show then, if that's the case, the dating show with Rand Carthon. I would give you tips on love and relationships.
Well, if he doesn't do well as a GM, there's always that career, You got to have versatility. You never know what could happen.
Running away with love with Rand Carthon.
There you go. At the Rand next time we have him on.
Hey, Rand, when you get fired, would you like to do this?
Don't present it like that.
No, Rand, a plan B. We were just thinking
exactly.
ran away with love, maybe? You cool with that?
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get your thoughts on that. The Titans sound like they're pushing receiver. There is just no way to know if that's what they want to do at this point in the draft process. But what about on the other side of the ball? We know that the Titans need to bolster up the defensive side of the ball. What Rand said about that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We are brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
What's going on, everybody? And hey, listen, I know you bet on the game last night, and I know you bet with the Predators, and they won, so you got some little change coming in. And I know you did it with our partners in sports, okay? And I'm excited, as I always am, to tell you about their introductory promotion available to all new customers in Tennessee. It's the No Danger First Wager. When you sign up for a Zen Sports account, you will receive up to $1,000 No Danger First Wager. When you place your first bet on Zen Sports, you will be reimbursed for the amount of your bet if it loses up to $1,000. Plus, Zen Sports is launching or has launched their VIP program for the premier bettors of Tennessee. If you think you might qualify, then listen up. The VIP program is by invite only. So if you feel that your Zen Sports play qualifies for a VIP consideration. Please check out the program details and apply at zensports.com/VIP. No other sports book will offer you a premier sports betting experience with 24/7 top-tier customer support and bigger and better action than Zen Sports. So what are you waiting for, bettors? Get going and download their app at zensports.com today. Zen Sports, where betting just got better. Remember, gambling problems, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years or older to bet here in Tennessee.
Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3, The Game and the Game Nashville app. We're broadcasting from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Talked a lot about receiver, offensive line. That's going to be the topic of conversation until the draft. I warned Brian Callahan at that. I was like, I know you've been through this before, but you're doing it again. And everybody buckle up because we're going to have a whole lot of wide receiver and offensive line talk. But I did think it was interesting yesterday, the difference in how Rand Carthon talked about the offense versus talked about the defense. Because we talked about this. Like, look, if you want to go corner in the first round because that's the best player available, you need corners. Like, you need a lot of defensive players. We talk a lot about offensively for a few reasons. Brian Callahan's an offensive guy. You have a young quarterback. And the needs offensively probably reared their ugly heads more than the deficiencies that you had defensively this past season. But Rand Carthon's saying, look, that's where our priorities need to be. That's where our concerns need to be, is offensively. This was Rand Carthon yesterday at the NFL Combine.
Yeah, so it's going to be a little bit of a difference. I think there's going to be some carryover on defense just in terms of structure. But the style will change a little bit. And then I think offensively it'll change, which is where you got to give our scouts grace. They've gone from post-draft last year throughout the entire fall of scouting for one scheme, and then now we're asking them to flip, on the drop of a dime and adjust. And so our guys have done a really good job, and that's why we felt it was, important for them to be in those meetings to see that, and we're giving them the, the leeway to kind of go back and adjust their grades a little to talk about guys that under the previous regime may not have fit, but they now fit us. But there are subtle differences. Like I said, the structure of it being an odd front team, a 3-4 team, if you will, is going to be kind of similar. Our defense has been good, these last couple years, and it's kind of what the organization has hung its hat on, so we're going to look to keep that going. But there'll be some subtle changes that'll be noticeable when we get out on the field.
Overall, it sounds like, look, this offense is going to be completely different, and we're trying to help our scouts pivot of, you were scouting for this, now you're scouting for a completely different ball game. The defense, there'll be some subtle changes. It's going to be the same. It doesn't mean that you don't need to add players desperately, but it just means the defense is probably going to look very similar to what we've seen the past few years. I'm cool with that.
And I think, too, you don't want to give your personnel, your scouts, your pro scouts, and your amateur scouts, basically, too much to have to turn over. I think it helps. Like, okay, let's try to keep the defense basically the same. That way we don't have to go get 10 new players to replace ones that might have fit in the old system but wouldn't fit in a new system. And let's concentrate on the new types of players we need for a new offense. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, it does. I think not that the defense doesn't need help. I think they do, and I think first and foremost they should try signing Denico Autry back. That should be their number one priority on defense at least.
I agree.
When free agency starts to come up, re-sign Denico Autry, put him back together with Jeffrey Simmons and Harold Landry, and add some more pieces to that defensive front. But I think the most glaring need is what's on the offensive side of the ball. Not to say that they don't have needs on the defense. I still think they need another linebacker, inside backer. I think they need 2 corners, possibly even a safety as well. But I think because of the way this league is going, there's more of a premium on that left tackle position than, say, a cornerback. Some teams put more premium on the wide receiver than they do the cornerback. If you're asking me, it would be tackle, cornerback, then wide receiver. But some teams don't have it that way, and maybe the Titans don't have it that way either because of who Brian Callahan is, where he's come from. They may be wide receiver, left tackle, then cornerback, or they may be left tackle, wide receiver, and then another position. So it depends on how you look at it. I think they believe in what they have as building blocks for the defense, and they should, because everything starts with Jeffrey Simmons and Harold Landry. So they believe in those 2 guys, and if you bring Denico Autry back. On offense, we don't have a true building block. We got some guys that we think could be building blocks for the offense, but we don't have guys that have shown they can be building blocks for this offense.
It's really just Levis.
It's Levis, because I don't even count D-Hop, because he's not going to be
He's
here.
31 years old.
Exactly. It's not like he's going to play here the next 6, 7, 8 years,
Peter Skoronski.
Yeah, Peter, but he has to play better.
Everybody's got to
Exactly.
play better. But I don't really even view Peter that much as a building block, more so of a position on the offensive line that's taken care of. I think the building block is Levis. Here's your young quarterback. Build around him, see what you have in him. Because, again, we don't know if Will Levis is going to be the quarterback for the next 10 years. We hope. We don't know. You have to build around him and see what you have. Now, again, that does not mean that you just ignore the defense. Like, you don't even have bodies to play defensively, much less good players defensively. I'm with you, D-Mase. I think they should just re-sign Danico Autry.
Yeah, you
I understand
re-signed,
he's, 31, 32 years
But
old.
the dude's had, he's been in 30
Double-digit
years?
sacks last year.
He's averaged, I think, close to 10 sacks each year he's been here, or 10 sacks each year he's been here. He's a player for you. He's a pro. You know what you're going to get out of him. He doesn't miss many games. And he works well with Harold and Jeffrey on that front line. So, yeah, try keeping him. But I think they have, and this is, I don't think this, when I say this, it's not a knock on Brian Callahan at all. But I think because of where Denard Wilson came from and how much emphasis they put on defense there and how attacking they were and how well that secondary played, I think they trust what the defensive coordinator can do with the defense because he already has guys. He has Harold Landry right now, a 10-plus sack guy that seems to be getting back in form now. You got Jeffrey Simmons, who I believe this year under Denard Wilson, he will have a all defensive type of year. I believe that. You can mark it down today. Jeffrey Simmons will have a defensive player of the year type season with Denard Wilson being his defensive coordinator. So you have some building blocks there. We talked about it. So I trust that you can work with those guys. It's all unknowns. Even with the quarterback, Will Levis, there's still this question mark. We have more question marks on offense than we do exclamation marks. Question mark on Will Levis. Can he pick up on what he did last year and pick and grow? Question mark, obviously, on Traylon Burks.
Do you
Question
have
mark
any
on Chig
exclamation
Okonkwo.
points on offense outside of DeAndre Hopkins?
No.
I
There's
think he's
none.
kind of
No.
a mini exclamation point at this point.
Just
It's
a
not-
little one?
Yeah, just kind of a little one. Used to be a big one. He's still good. But it's still, you got to realize where he is in his career. That's what the only question I would have on Autry, because I think he is a pro. He is really good. What's the market if he just says, thanks, but no thanks? I want to go on a team that's on the verge of winning, take a 1-year deal. What are you enticing him with to keep him here? I think that's an interesting question for a guy that age. Because you're wanting to be good for the next 3 years, right? You're not just saying, we got to make it happen this year. It's not just about this year, because he's going to help him for this year. But can he give me 2 more years? Can he give me 3 more years? I have to base my offer to keep him on that.
How old is Danico Autry? He has to
Did
be
you say he's
early
31?
30?
He's in his 30s, early 30s.
Yeah.
I want to say he's 32. He's 33.
33.
33. So,
So he got about
beyond this coming year.
Got a really
I don't know.
2 to 3. If you take care of his body, he has about 2, maybe 3 years.
So what's it? That's the question. Coming off a great year. So what's his market value?
For a 33-year-old, see, I don't know. I would say he's making right now base 7. I would say 2 years, $10 million deal, 5-year per, or $5 million per.
Yeah, I mean, that.
I think if I'm his agent, I'm saying,
or 6.
Okay, is there anybody out there that would go higher?
Oh, I'd
if
shop
I just
it.
hit, if I just hit
I'd shop it
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
But that's what I would offer if I were the Titans. Look, we have a lot of needs. We don't want to create a new one. You're a good player, a reliable player. We'll bring you back on a deal that's not breaking the bank. You're not taking cash away from other needs. And you can come back and be a great player. I saw this one article, I think it was maybe on foxsports.com, and it was the free agent that's most pressing for every team to re-sign. They put Azeez Al-Shire for the Titans, and I think the Titans should re-sign Azeez Al-Shire. I think Danico Autry is a more pressing need to re-sign. He was more impactful.
I think so too, especially now that Harold is picking back up the form where he left off 2 years ago. You put him, a 10-plus sack getter on the edge. You got the Nico Autry, a 10-plus sack getter. Then you got Jeffrey Simmons. He can be a 10-plus sack getter. You're talking about 30 sacks across the board, and that's just those 3 guys. You can never have too many interior guys that go get the quarterback.
And Jeffrey Simmons needs to do more this year too.
Absolutely, I think he does. That's why I think he's going to he's going to take this season as a challenge, because I think now the big money starts to kick in, and everybody's going to be looking at him. And what are you going to do? Because last year was kind of a down year. I know you were injured too, but last year was kind of a down year. How do you then come back off of a down year? Again, I truly believe that the move that they make for defensive coordinator, part of it was with Jeffrey Simmons in mind. How can I get the best out of Jeffrey Simmons? How can I get him to be that dominant force we have seen so many times during games? We need you to be that every time. If we're going to compare you to Aaron Donalds of the world and Chris Jones of the world, you got to be a dominant force for us every game. And I believe he will this season.
As we talk about defensive players, and I only bring this up because this is a conversation I had over the weekend, Harold Landry has the highest cap hit on the Titans. Do you think Harold Landry makes too much money? Would you ask him to take a pay cut if you were the Titans?
No, because of what he was able. You got to understand, he was coming off a serious knee injury where he missed the whole season. If you know anything about that and football and everything, it's going to take him a minute to get going. It took him, 8 games to really get back into form to look like the old Harold Landry. And once he started to look like the old Harold Landry, what happened? More sacks started to come. So, no, I'm not asking him to take a pay cut.
But when you say take a pay cut, when you can ask, right?
Yeah.
We saw what happened to Byard. But are you saying rework the deal to create more cap space for others, or take a pay cut or get cut?
Take a pay cut.
Not
take a pay cut or get cut. And I'm not
Because
endorsing
I
this
think
at
my
all.
answer, if I'm Harold Landry, is no, I will not take a pay cut. I just had a good year. I had a good second half of the year. I'm not taking a pay cut.
I'm not saying
why?
that they should.
You guys have a lot of cap space. I think he sees that this is not a team that's about to win a Super Bowl. I'm not taking less money.
Yeah, nah.
If I'm a player, I am always going to say no to a pay cut.
But some people would say it's either that I know they're going to cut me if I don't take this pay cut. That's the writing on the wall. So that's why I'm asking. Because there's 2 ways you can say lower his cap hit, so it makes more sense. Kick the can down the road. That's another way of doing it. I don't know. I think I would lean towards just let him play for that hit this year.
Yeah.
And then
while I'm trying to see what I've got
year.
in other places of the roster, then let's see what happens.
I have no problem with the
After
amount
that.
of money that Harold Landry makes. I mean, he had double-digit sacks, making $17 million a year. That's top 10 at his position.
Yeah.
I have no problem with it, but it was brought to my attention. I don't have a problem with it.
Me either. Maybe next year, if he, maybe he can rework the deal and give him some more money up front in a signing bonus, then lower, the cap hit.
Nashville's best deal this week is 312 Pizza Company. I love 312 Pizza Company. 312 Pizza Company serves the best pizza in town, as well as Chicago-style eats like Chicago dogs, Italian beef sandwiches, and so much more. You can get half off a $30 gift card to 312 Pizza Company at thegamenashville.com/deals right now while supplies last.
Imagine waking up this time next week and being 100% debt-free. No credit cards, no car loan, no personal loan. Hey, Willy here for you. It's Loan Pronto's Equity Express line of credit. They can make that all happen. Homeowners are turning their home equity into cash almost instantly. With Loan Pronto's AI-based system, you can get approval in about 10 minutes with almost no documentation, no appraisal, no hassle. You can get hundreds of thousands of dollars out of your home, whatever you need, to use the money and pay off other loans. The average homeowner saves about $800 a month doing this. your home's value is up. You can use that to wipe out those credit cards, get some money for a home improvement project. Hundreds of thousands are at your fingertips, and approval is just minutes away. Call now, 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval, equal housing lender.
The Daily Face-Off, Frank Saravalli saying that you've told teams as long as the Predators are in position to make the playoffs, Saros won't be traded. Is that the case? Barry Trotz, presented by Gary Force Acura.
That is the case. I think if we're in the playoff spot, I owe that to our players. I owe that to our fans. That's fairly accurate. Now, obviously, I'm going to leave a little window open. If there's some kind of crazy deal that comes out and knocks me on my chair, then I will definitely, I owe that to the fans as well and the organization. So, but yeah, that's pretty accurate.
That was Barry Trotz on Stillman and Company yesterday. Hey, tune in to 94.9 The Fan today as Vanderbilt baseball takes on Evansville at Hawkins Field with pregame at 4:15, first pitch at 4:30. Coverage also available on 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. So that was Barry. I would say almost totally confirming, not totally confirming, but confirming the Frank Saravalli report yesterday of as long as the Preds are in a playoff position, Barry Trotz does not intend to trade UC Saros. But we got some new tea coming out from Pierre LeBrun of The Athletic. It's a long breakdown of his sit-down and conversation with Barry Trotz and what they intend to do at the trade deadline. And sometimes I'll read these and from the national insiders or any tidbits that they might have from Barry Trotz, and I'll say, I know that. Barry said that on our station.
Right. Hey, kudos to Barry Trotz for doing it, our station for having the partnership with the Predators, and for Jared for excellent questions. But you're right. What you're about to read only sort of reinforces what Jared scooped yesterday or Barry Trotz revealed yesterday. But Pierre LeBrun's got a lot of big reach. So it's almost like Pierre was listening in on the conversation. Maybe I need to have a little conversation with Barry Trotz, let's rather than just credit and, list quotes from 102.5 The Game.
Which you could have done.
Which you could have done.
Those would have been some
and almost
juicy
had the same
tidbits.
stuff. Yeah.
Right. And there was one part in this, really, that you brought to my attention. And this part of the article talking about UC Saros. Pierre LeBrun writes, as we reported previously this season, the Predators were ready to listen only if clubs were willing to blow them away with high-end offers. Those haven't come in, and it doesn't sound like he's going anywhere at this deadline at least. Barry Trotz says, no, I think he'll be playing net for us this year. I don't suspect anything coming. We're pretty safe in saying he's going to be here. That does feel a little bit more concrete.
Maybe just a tad further than what we just played you when he discussed with Jared. Jared, of course, had 2 or 3 follow-ups about what if this, what if that, and you deal with all the what ifs. As Barry Trotz says in this article, I got to play both sides of the fence. But one point he made, he goes, "I've got a coach." I'm paraphrasing here. I've got a coach that I think has done as good a job with anybody. He thinks he should get Coach of the Year consideration based on the expectation level. And I think if you take a look at the underlying numbers and how the goaltending has almost been break even up until about 2 weeks ago, then I think that's a fair point to make. Like Andrew Burnett is elevating, the system is elevating the group. And I think that's an important thing. He also says, I think there is value, even if you say make the playoffs, get whipped in the first round. Let's just say that could happen. He thinks there's value in that. He says it's hard to make the playoffs. And when a team has worked this hard to get to that point, I want to reward them and also look at the big picture as well, which is in a nutshell what he's told Jared yesterday. Just maybe had a little slightly different way of putting it. But I do think some fans kind of poo-poo, even around here, where we can almost take it for granted. Like, look at some of these franchises that haven't made the playoffs in 7, 8, 9 years or more. Not even make the playoffs. Forget about a playoff run. And I know that's what everybody wants. They want a run in the playoffs, but there is something to be said for having a successful year where you make the playoffs and you have your hat in the ring.
And I think this year is different. If that is indeed what happens, the Preds make the playoffs and they make it competitive, maybe you got a 6 or 7 games, and then they lose in the first round, that feeling is significantly different than it was a couple of years ago, or even what we were saying last season. Because I was saying, I know Predators fans were saying, sick and tired of making the playoffs only to just get whipped every single year, not have a hope of getting further in the playoffs, of competing for a cup. This year's different because you're not holding on to that same core and trying to run it back every single year. It's a different direction. It's younger players. It's a new coach. It's a completely new direction and vision for the organization.
And a farm system that looks like stuff is coming up through the pike that could help you down the road that is promising.
Right. And again, and I will reiterate of how fun a playoff series would be, how fun it is to have games that matter, how much fun Thursday is going to be, but I'm still not willing to mortgage the future for this year's playoffs.
Yeah.
But as Barry said, look, he values the playoffs.
Now, and LeBrun did speculate that he said if the right guy was out there, he thinks they could maybe add one guy who could have a little scoring touch. And I do think if you could add one thing without mortgaging the future, and that's a big if you could add one person who could finish a little bit more consistently than the group has done, and maybe that's a guy from Milwaukee, I don't know. But if there's a veteran guy, I think that's the one thing you would look to add if you wanted to add something, because they create enough chances, odd man rushes, shots from the slot, all of these things they keep track of now. They get enough of those to score more goals than they've got, but they don't have a lot of finishers. That's a weakness that they have right now.
And that's something that Barry Trotz even mentioned yesterday with Jared. That's going to do it for us today. We will be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Stillman & Company is up next.
Be love and love on your people. Peace.